Oh, well, goodness me, I hope the rest of this is less exciting than that part was. So thank you for joining us this afternoon for our second of 3 town halls this week. My goal today is to give you additional information that wasn't available to us the last time we chatted in July, and to gather any questions that today might prompt or that occur to you as a result of anything I say today. So I want to start with my usual disclaimer, which is that what I'm going to say to you now is our best thinking at this moment in time. I said that on July 29th, and I can tell you that things have changed since July 29th. And I have a suspicion things might change again before the start of school, that there will have to be adjustments to what we have planned. So as we get started this afternoon, I want to begin with probably what is the most important change affecting parents and students. And that is that school will open for students on September 14th, Monday, September 14th. We're going to take the week before, the 8th, 9th, 10th, and 11th, so that we can work with our staff, they can work with the team here, that we can provide the mandatory trainings around COVID-19, that we can work on making sure our teaching and learning is well put together as students return to us either in person or virtually. So again, school will actually start on Monday, September 14th. One of the things I had mentioned in July, and I will say again today, is we're going to need you, parents, guardians, to help us with health checks for students in the morning prior to the start of school. Staff will be checking their own health. Those of us who have been working this summer have been using the app that allows us to do that, the link rather. And it's a series of questions. The default answer is no. Do you have a temperature? Do you have a runny nose? Other questions that reflect the symptoms of COVID. If the answer to any of those questions is yes, you would plug in the answer. And then the color of the screen on the link changes to let you know whether or not you should attend school that day. It's going to be critically important that you help us with that first part of the day, that first health check. And I will tell you that we're going to be sharing information with you as parents and community members, as well as with our own staff, to talk about how this works and things you might want to consider in the morning now to make it a little smoother for you at home and certainly for our employees as they get ready to come to work. I want you to know that we're going to be enforcing social distancing in all settings. So in our classrooms, which we'll take a look at in a little bit, in our hallways, certainly anywhere that students might be in the schools, among our staff members, and masks are going to be mandatory. So everyone here, custodians, bus drivers, teachers, administrators, students will all need to wear their masks, and then there will be mask breaks. We're going to limit the number of folks who can visit our schools. So those of you who might have enjoyed stopping into a classroom, maybe you came in to have lunch with your son or daughter, we're not going to be able to have social visitors. School is really going to be a place where students come for their learning and socialization, but that we are a pretty tight-knit community and family within those schools. Again, we're going to start pretty restrictive, and then as things change in the state, as the governor determines next steps, we will be able to loosen up a little bit on some of those things we'll require. So with that said, I'm going to start by talking about what's changed. Karen, could you put the slide up for daycare? I know. All right. So I'm happy to announce that we are going to have before and after school care at the elementary schools provided by the Y as we have in years past. And I want to publicly thank them for being such great partners and working with us to make this happen. So originally, I had said there wouldn't be before or after school care. I want to be very clear there is before and after school care through the Y. You will find the information about that on our website. And in addition, we have worked with many providers in the community. That information is also on our website so that you have options in addition to the Y program. And I want to thank all of these folks who have been so incredibly helpful to us and willing to partner so that we can make sure parents have that before and after school care. Karen, could you put the elementary schedule up? So I'm going to take you through an elementary day and also through a secondary day from the overview of what schedules would look like. We will talk about in-person learning, K through 5. We will talk about hybrid learning, 6 through 12. And we will talk about students who maybe have chosen, their families have chosen a fully virtual experience. So in terms of our elementary schedule, we are anticipating that all students whose families selected in person will attend school each and every day. So that's our students in grades kindergarten through 5th grade. We're going to move to 2 different start times, and that's to accommodate social distancing on our buses, also to give us time to clean the buses in between bus runs. So Glendale and Glen Warden, the bus will drop students off between 8:45 and 9 a.m. at those schools. Classes will start at 9 a.m. and pickup time to go home will be 2:45. At Lincoln and at Sacandaga, the bus will drop students off at school at 9:25. Classes will begin at 9:30, and the pickup time to go home will be 3:15. And again, we need those staggered start times so that we can socially distance children on the buses where they and the drivers, and if there's a monitor, will all be expected to wear masks, and also to wipe the buses down in between those elementary runs. So whereas we used to bring all of the elementary students in at approximately the same time, we're on a staggered start and finish time. Once students are in the classroom, so let me back up. Let's say that I'm a teacher with 20 students. I can't have all 20 of my students in the classroom and have them socially distanced. So what would happen is that 10 students, which we might call Group A, will be in one classroom. 10 students, which we could call Group B, will be in the other classroom. I, the teacher, will be in with one group of students, and a supervising adult will be in another classroom. So that could be a teacher, it could be a teacher from a special, it could be a teaching assistant. So students are not left on their own. I want to be very clear about that. There will always be adults with them. As the classroom teacher, I'm going to spend half the day with that first group of 10. And it's during that time that we're going to have our core instruction in English language arts, mathematics, science, and we're going to embed social studies in our English language arts program. Because we'll have somewhere between 2 hours to 15 for that core instructional time, we want to make certain that we're focusing on what we're calling the priority standards. So we're still going to follow New York State curriculum and New York State standards, but we're prioritizing them. So we teach the most important content and as deeply as possible. While that first group of 10 students is having their core instruction with the teacher, the other group of 10 students are having a special, so either art, or music or library or physical education. They are having some time to work. It could be academic intervention support, response to intervention support. It could be court classwork that the teacher has provided. It could be reflex math, any number of things, again, with adult supervision. And then those students will also have lunch and recess. So I've got half of my group in the morning getting core instruction, half getting those additional instructional opportunities in another close by location with an adult. At midday, the teacher is going to leave the classroom. The a supervising adult will come into that first group, Group A, and the teacher will go provide the same core instruction to Group B. So at that point, Group B will be getting their English language arts, mathematics, science, embedded social studies, and the priority standards. The other group who's already had that, now it's their time to get a special art, music, library, or physical education, some additional time for work, lunch, and recess. So it's not the children who will move, it's the adults who will move. We're creating pods and trying to limit the number of individuals who are interacting with groups of children or with other adults, again, as part of our response to the pandemic. Students will eat lunch in the classroom. So food will be brought to them. They will have mask breaks periodically, but we will be masked the majority of the time. In 2021, there will be no chorus, I'm sorry to say, but we're elementary chorus, but I am still hopeful that we will have band and orchestra at elementary. The other thing I would want you to know is that although your child was assigned a teacher in May or June, that may not be their teacher as they return to school in September. That's because some of our staff are going to be teaching students who will be or who have selected a fully virtual program. And as you know from the parent surveys that we've asked you to complete, we'll now be able to know based on who's coming back and how many people we can fit in every room in terms of social distancing, how many sections we need, what kind of coverage we need, and then who we might be able to assign to our virtual students. So I know that's hard to hear if you've been thinking excitedly about the teacher you might have in September, but I want to be upfront and honest with you and let you know that it's very possible that you won't have the person you thought you would. And we will get that information to you as quickly as possible. Finally, I'd like to have Karen show you a couple of pictures of what our classrooms look like socially distanced so that you can get a sense when I say that what I'm talking about. So this is a classroom that has been distanced to keep students 6 feet apart and to also provide egress between desks and in and out of the classroom. And here's another example. So again, if I'm a classroom teacher, there'd be 2 classrooms like this that would have my class in them. We are going to be using other areas in the school that we don't always use for instruction. In some schools, our cafeterias, our gyms, our libraries, so that we can really focus on having students apart. Karen, can you see if we're getting questions?
Bunches.
Bunches. Would you like to give me some of them?
I would. So there's some that I can, let me just stop sharing the screen. There's some that if you want to mute, I can unmute and just.
I'm muted.
Beautiful.
apologize for us. Okay, you should be good now.
Thank you. So folks, there's several questions in the chat around orientation for kindergarten, 6th grade, and 9th grade. So yes, we will be having orientation for kindergartners. There is a kindergarten opening team. We have to think differently about our youngest learners who have never had school experiences before. So that team is working to make sure that we have a soft landing for our kindergartners and a yummy welcome for them. So yes, there will be kindergarten orientation and information will be coming out soon. Folks are asking about 6th and 9th grade orientation. So yes, we will be hosting socially distant 6th and 9th grade orientation. Information will be coming out around orientation. It will be mailed home this week, so you should receive it by the end of this week, the beginning of next week. There are questions from folks about AP honors and acceleration, asking if those are still being offered at the secondary level. And the answer is yes, those are still going to be offered at the secondary level. There's questions about attendance when we're fully virtual. If a student has an appointment, is going to miss a virtual class due to a medical appointment, do folks still call the main office? Yes, we would ask that you still call the main office because we will be taking daily attendance as we would if your child was in person. There are some questions in the chat around Y-Care. So folks are asking, what are the socially distanced protocols around Y-Care? Y-Care has different set of socially distanced rules than schools do. So we would ask that you reach out specifically to the Y for their practices and protocols. There was a question in the chat that asked, that stated, I thought we couldn't use Y-Care because we needed to deep clean. So we have worked with the facilities department and Y-Care to arrange times and locations so that we are able to do those deep cleaning in those areas. And there are also areas where students won't be at the beginning of the day. So we have been able to balance that out to provide Y-Care. Folks have asked questions about what platform will we be using? Will we be using Seesaw, Google Classroom, or something else? The answer is we, for K-12, will be providing our virtual experiences using Google Classroom and Google Meet as a single platform district-wide. We also have an approved software list that folks will be using so that there will be a certain number of apps and extensions for folks to engage with so that it's a bit more consistent across classrooms. Folks are asking us if we could please repost the walker and drop-off times for buildings, and yes, we will get that up on our website. And there's quite a few questions about secondary, but I think I'll let Susan go through her secondary presentation and then we'll go back to those questions.
So let's take a look at secondary. This is a bit more convoluted, I think is the word I would say. So I'm going to ask Karen if she could put up the middle school, high school bell schedule. We're going to have students assigned to one of three groups. They will either be assigned to Tartans, Strong, or Crimson. Each of those groups will come on particular days. On the days when you are in person, you will need to have your Chromebook or your device from home. And when I say device from home, I don't mean a cell phone. You would need a tablet, an iPad, a laptop, or one of our Chromebooks. So again, that was a survey question. If you were going to need a Chromebook, to borrow a Chromebook, please let us know, and I want to reiterate that. So these are the bell times. At the high school, students are going to report to either the auditorium, that will be grades 10 through 12, where we can socially distance them, or to the B cafeteria, I believe, grade 9, where we can socially distance them, remembering that there is never more than a third of our students here at one time. They will get their homeroom announcements, prep for the day, and then immediately go to period 1 where our teachers will be waiting for them. You can see that our bus drop-offs will occur between 7:10 and 7:25. And then first period will begin promptly at 7:37 after that brief homeroom. Students who are fully virtual in grades 6 through 12 will have a regular schedule, so a schedule of classes. And the expectation will be that those students, as well as the members of either Crimson, Tartan, or Strong, who are at home on a given day, log in to their classes in order, just like they appear on the schedule. So when you are home, you are still responsible for attending all of your classes. Attendance will be taken. When you are assigned assignments, you're responsible for those. So no one has any off days, so to speak. Karen's got our schedule up, and I want to point out to you, you can see that this is a mock-up of 3 weeks of school. And Crimson comes in first on Monday. Strong comes in Tuesday, and then it says virtual. Students will attend classes on the virtual day, either morning or afternoon. I know the team is working on that. They will be 20-minute classes on that day, and teachers can do any number of things in terms of that time. They could post an assignment if they chose to. They could be meeting with individual students. They will be spending a lot of time on professional development and working as colleagues so that we can make sure each day we are providing the best possible program for our youngsters. And then you see that top row, Tartans is in on Thursday, and then on Friday, Crimson returns, and it continues to rotate through. The consistency is the virtual day, which will be the shortened period day, but each day we will have a different group of students at school, Strong, Tartan, or Crimson. And for students who are fully virtual, again, they will be following their regular schedule and logging in for every class that they have. I want to also share with you that in terms of our secondary schedule, students will still receive or have an opportunity to attend career and technical education through Cap Region BOCES. We'll be sharing information about how that will work. We're working with Capital Region BOCES about that, as is every other school here. They will be able to attend New Visions, students who are attending programs for students with special needs outside of the district. All of those programs will run. Kindergarten through 12th grade here are students with special needs and our students who are English as a new language learners, students with 504 accommodations. All of those things will be provided as part of our program. It's, in both cases, elementary and middle high school, we won't be having assemblies, we won't be having field trips. We're working on virtual clubs, but there are many activities that you would typically think of that have to do with school that at this point, as we open, will not be offered. Our goal is to bring students in and our staff as safely as possible, provide them with their instruction, and then have them leave the buildings, which will be disinfected every evening and then locked up until folks return in the morning. As Karen has pointed out, the Y programs at the elementary will be in spots where we won't have students otherwise, and so we're able to do that. But we've got to keep traffic in the building to a minimum in our schools. In addition, we won't start with continuing ed unless somehow there are things that people are going to offer virtually. We haven't quite figured that out yet. We anticipate again that we are hoping to work out band and orchestra. Students at the high school are going to eat in the small gym. I believe it's called the Sea Wing Gym. I think of it as a place where we vote on school budgets. We will be using the cafeterias for instruction and study halls. And then students at middle school will be eating in the large gym. And again, in all of those situations, people will be socially distanced, have masks, and a mask break, of course, during lunch. For those students who are home because it's not their in-person day or they are fully virtual, there will be an opportunity to receive meals from school, and there will be more information about that posted on our website. I've had folks ask me about isolation rooms. What are we going to do if someone needs to be isolated? I can tell you that we are working with provider organization who will have two certified nursing assistants who will be with us 8 hours each day. They will be our floaters. I'm hoping they can give some help in the nurses' offices, but in the event that we have a student who needs isolation, that's the person who would keep them safe until their parent or guardian could come and get them. In the case of staff, folks would take themselves home. It will be up to the individual physician and or the Department of Health, Schenectady County Department of Health, to determine if children or adults need testing and or quarantine. So I want you to understand the school's not going to be making those decisions itself. We are working very closely with our school physicians, with the Department of Health, and then we're going to ask you, both as employees and parents, to work with your own family physicians if in fact we have a concern. Karen, do you see questions that we could tackle now? You would like me to mute? Okay, I'm muted.
Hi, folks. I am trying to pull the questions in the chat that seem to be rolling more than once or more than twice. So just trying to pull out those high-level questions, and just to let folks know that we will be pulling all the questions out of the Q&A today and answering those on our website. So if I don't get to your specific question today, your question will be answered, just perhaps not in this meeting. So folks are asking high school, middle school schedules. When do we expect those to be sent to families? Our goal is to get those out to folks this week. There seems to be a bit of confusion around the rotation at the high school, middle school, and when folks come. So I'm just going to share those slides again quickly. And we'll take you back through that quickly. So this is the same bell schedule for the high school and the middle school. So the high school and the middle school have moved on to the same bell schedule. So yes, so for folks who are saying what happens on Wednesday, we do have a slide later in the presentation that we'll get to. So this is the new high school and middle school bell schedule. Our student groups again, and lots of folks are asking in the chat about can you move groups to be with friend groups? And unfortunately, we are not able to grant those requests. These groups were crafted based on room size so that we can ensure social distancing in each of our rooms and in our hallways. So we will not be able to say someone with the last name of Z cannot move to the Crimson group. It may throw off the balance of numbers in a room. So students are expected to be in class on their daily schedule each day. So regardless if it's an in-person day or a virtual day or a fully virtual day, we expect that students are following their daily schedule, the daily bell schedule, the schedule of classes that they have each day. So when they're in person, they'll walk through a typical day. When they're virtual, they'll log in at class times and join the class. So the instruction that students are receiving is continuous, Monday through Friday, from their teachers. So each day builds on the next or will be a reteaching day. This ensures consistency of instruction, regardless if you are in person, hybrid, or fully virtual. So here's the middle school, same situation with curriculum. Here is our virtual Wednesday at high school. You can see that we're starting in the afternoon, and the morning will be used for professional development, curriculum development, checking in with students and families. You'll notice that it's the same for the middle school. So I hope that clears up the questions in the chat around the high school schedule. So folks are also asking questions about if we're using Chromebooks at the secondary, will there be enough left at elementary? So our goal is to be as close to one-to-one between bring your own device, students bringing those devices, not phones, into school. And then yes, our plan is to redistribute the Chromebooks that don't go out to virtual families and families who need them back at the elementary school. So yes, our plan is perhaps not the first 2 weeks of school as we get settled, but certainly after that to get those Chromebooks redistributed at elementary. We have some questions around large areas. So at the elementary level, if students are being moved into gyms or cafeterias, will there be more than one class in the area? And I can say as of this moment, that is not our plan. If they were to be in the gym, we do have dividers, so we would pull those dividers into 2 spaces. A follow-up question was, what about technology in these areas? The answer is we don't have smart boards or active boards in these areas, but we do have projection and computers and speakers so that same experience, students can have that same experience regardless of classroom situation. We have folks asking about AIS and IOPL at the elementary level. Yes, we do plan to offer AIS and IOPL. IOPL will look at starting in October like we usually do. We won't be starting in September, but we are hoping to planning to offer in this moment IOPL starting in October. I just want to make sure, when will Chromebooks be available? We hope to have the Chromebook distribution up and running in the next 2 weeks. We will certainly put that information up on our website, out on Blackboard, and be reaching out to individual families. So Susan, I've got 3 questions I'm going to throw to you. One, if you could speak a bit to ventilation in the buildings. 2, if you could speak to students who are fully virtual, participation in virtual clubs or activities. And then 3, the accuracy of the calendar that was just sent out. So I'm going to mute myself.
This and I typically are because we're having to mute in between each other's conversations. So I apologize for those delays. Karen, could you just tell me that first question again?
Sure, ventilation. Ventilation.
All right. Schools are already required to meet strict ventilation rules in terms of fresh air in and circulating air. We also have filters presently that, although they don't filter for COVID, of course, filter for allergens and those kinds of things. We being our buildings and grounds folks, are working on enhancements to our ventilation systems, not because they don't meet the current guidance, but because we want to make them as good as we can. So the Health and Safety Advisory Team is working on that, and we will post more information about that as they complete their work. Karen, what was your next question? Sorry.
That's okay. Can fully virtual students participate in virtual clubs or activities?
Fully virtual students will be able to participate in fully virtual clubs if we're able to have them, and activities. Again, I want to be very honest with people. As we open school and we think about those first 10 weeks, the first quarter for fully virtual students in grades 6 through 12, and then fully virtual students who are at elementary and would be virtual for the first trimester. We want to make sure that we're clear that the expectations for them will be the same as the expectations for any other students. So their participation in whatever we might be able to offer at that point would certainly be welcome. However, I would also say to you that we're going to be under pretty tight lockdown, if you will, during those initial weeks of school. And again, everything we have done up until now is with the guidance of the Department of Health, the State Education Department, and the governor's executive orders. So I feel very confident about our ability to have students safely return. But that is with the 6-foot social distancing and masks and keeping folks away from each other, not letting them traverse the buildings, keeping things pretty locked down. So we will provide whatever opportunities we can and perhaps be able to add to them throughout the school year. And Kara, there was one more.
How accurate is the calendar that was just sent out?
If you mean the paper calendar, the one that arrived in the mail, there's a disclaimer on the top of every page. I'm sure you've noticed that says subject to change. And clearly we've already done that in terms of start date for students. PTAs, for example, could certainly meet virtually. They're not going to be able to initially meet in our schools. PTA council could meet virtually. Other activities, we're going to have to look at those each time an activity is planned or scheduled. But I can say with certainty, if it's something that we would be holding in one of our schools at night, it's not going to happen during that first 10 weeks of school. So we've begun some conversations about what Meet the Teacher nights might look like, or how we might share that information with parents differently. But I can tell you we will not be having Meet the Teacher nights in the traditional sense where everyone comes one evening. So I guess I would have to say the dates are correct, but the way we handle the activity will be different, if at all.
Thank you. Do you want to mute and I'll pick up a few questions?
Sure. You're all set.
So folks, we've got a few more questions in the chat. One of the questions that keeps coming up is why did we change the schedule from the initial schedule to this schedule? So we looked at many scheduling options. We had some really nice feedback from folks asking us if we could move to a block schedule, asking if we could move to a 50-50 schedule, asking us, how could we get students in more? And so some of the considerations we use, we talk about the 3 levers of space and instruction and consistency. And so part of it was that the number of students who are coming back, we cannot socially distance into 2 groups. The size of our rooms does not allow us to socially distance and bring the students who would like to come back socially distanced in 2 groups. We do need to split them into 3 so that we can keep them socially distanced in our room. The schedule that we settled on allows for a deep cleaning of the building. On Wednesday, it allows for professional development, office hours for remediation and enrichment with teachers, and opportunities for teachers and support staff to connect with families. It was very obvious from the survey that folks wanted more rigor to the classroom environment from March to this year. And that they also felt that consistency was really important. So this model allows us to get with teachers, get with families, and make sure that we are providing high quality, rigorous instructional delivery. And we understand that this is a change, and not everyone is pleased with the change, but we felt that we needed to balance the rigor, the increase in rigor, the opportunity for training, the opportunity for connections, and social distancing. We were not able to break into 2 groups. So I hope that answers folks' questions there. So Susan, let me just check in the chat. Equitable opportunities are coming up for students as much as possible. Fully virtual schedule for elementary. So I can put that up for you, Susan, if you want to talk a bit more about the fully virtual schedule at elementary. Okay, I'll just pop that up for folks. Give me just a second. So folks, the fully virtual schedule for elementary will run on the same hour block that they would if they were in person. We hope to be able to, the academic team is talking about different ways to create buddy connections at elementary between students who are home and at school. So in the schedule, what you can't see in the model that's on the screen right now is that we have carved out time each week where that both sets of students are free, so that a social worker could host a social event, a principal could bring the students together, the two teachers could work as buddy classroom teachers, which we would encourage. So students who are fully virtual and students who are in person do have an opportunity to interact. So these are just two examples where we would have time with our core subjects. We would also be providing specials and then support services, OT, PT, speech, any other service that needed to be provided would happen in those times. So we will get those schedules out to folks as we regroup. One of the details I want to make sure that we point out to folks is that we will be combining students from all 4 elementary schools into our virtual classrooms. So far, the feedback from the survey doesn't allow us to have just one classroom from each elementary matched up with staff who will be teaching virtually. So we will be combining students from all 4 elementaries in our virtual classrooms. So folks know that we're asking for a commitment for at least the first trimester for folks who are going virtually or in person, and then you can request a change there. I just want to be clear that we may not be able to return you to your home school due to social distancing if you do ask to switch from fully virtual to in person. If your child's original building is at capacity for social distancing and another building isn't, we would be happy to fill your request, but in that other building. And when the pandemic is over and all things are back to normal, we would of course return you to your home building. So I hope that that answers folks' questions, again, around the plan for virtual and in-person learning. So Susan, I will pass it back to you, and I'll, folks, give me just a minute. I'll check back in the chat and see if there's questions rising there.
Karen, while you do that, I'll remind people that you're going to be going through all these questions, and if you didn't get to any, you and the team are going to be answering them and posting them online. So don't get panicked if we don't get to your answer today.
Thank you, David, and welcome.
Thank you. Those of us in the lower part of Scotia did not have power this late morning and early afternoon.
Understood. That's why Karen and I have relocated. The district office was also without power. I want to talk a bit about cleaning. I know that has been on folks' mind. I mentioned to you that we will be disinfecting schools and school buses once daily. We have invested in sprayers that will allow us to use the cleaner that we have used in the district. It's called H2 Orange. And what will happen is our custodial staff will go through a classroom and clean, which includes things like emptying trash. And then behind them will be a person who sprays the room down. And then the room is locked. And the spray sits and dries and kills germs. So that will be happening. In between that, certainly at times during the day, we would suspect that desks will be wiped down. Again, remembering that there are far fewer children in each classroom at any one time. Children, as I mentioned, won't be eating in the cafeterias at elementary, and it'll be easier for us to clean in gyms at the secondary level after eating. There will be hand sanitizer available throughout the school and in classrooms. In terms of our restrooms, many of them are single-use restrooms, so they will be open for students. We won't be cleaning between every student. In our gang bathrooms, which are partitioned off, the urinals and toilets will be usable. Sinks will be closed off to make sure there's a 6-foot distance between any sinks. We are going to be as diligent as possible in terms of the wipe down of the buses. So they'll get out on their first run, which is the middle school and high school, having been disinfected the night before. Then they'll be wiped down before that first elementary run, and then they'll be wiped down again before the second elementary run. Buildings and grounds, which is where our custodians and cleaners live, if you will, is being very diligent about training for cleaning during a pandemic, securing the supplies we need, including all of the PPE, the sprayers, and then making certain that we have as much coverage as possible during the hours when staff is here. So we're going to move what we call our night custodians. They will come in earlier, and they will be here as the Y program shut down, and then probably end their shifts around 8:30 again, so we can lock down our buildings and make sure that they are left alone after they've been disinfected and cleaned. So I know that sometimes people want to come back after hours and pick up something that their child forgot. We're not going to be able to do that. The buildings are truly going to be locked. I would also want you to know that we're not going to use cubbies at the elementary level, so students can have a backpack and put their belongings in it. It will hang on their chair along with their coat. And initially at middle and high school, we will not be using lockers, so students will be able to have backpacks. And again, folks will need to keep their personal belongings with them. We're going to need your help as parents to teach your children about mask safety and how to take a mask off and put it back on, to help them understand, especially our little people. Having taught elementary, I know how helpful they want to be to each other, for teaching them to understand that they should not be sharing with other students, giving other students their pencils, their papers, food, all of those kinds of things. We've had some questions about food allergies. Although we will be delivering food to the classrooms, in terms of the data we keep and our food service providers' understanding of students and who has allergies and who's not, we will handle that as we always have. So students will be safe in that regard. And initially, we're probably going to have a little bit of a limited menu. It will still meet our dietary guidelines, but much of our food will be grab and go as opposed to fixed on the spot. So that will make a bit of a difference as students order and pick up get their lunches.
Susan,
Yes, David.
can I ask you 2 questions that I've gotten a lot?
Sure.
Just if you don't mind.
No.
You may have covered these actually as well, but can parents send cleaning products with their children? Can they have wipes or hand sanitizer in their bags to use?
Technically, no, but I'm not going to search their bags, and neither is anyone else.
Okay, that's the answer. And the other one had to do with the restrooms. And is there going to be some way to monitor restrooms so
Yes.
that there's not 10 kids in there in a
Yes.
3? Yeah.
Absolutely. Some of our staff who would at other times be in the hallways, making sure that students were where they belonged at any given time, that people weren't loitering. Those folks will be redeployed to certain areas to monitor those types of things. Because again, Another thing I should mention, there won't be senior passes and there won't be honors privileges at secondary. So students at the high school will not be able to leave for lunch or, go across the street. Again, we're going to be pretty closed down in an effort to keep our buildings as clean and safe as possible.
But we are going to have breakfast and lunch available for children. So.
Absolutely. And for those, again, who are fully virtual or it is not their in-person day, food will be available.
Thanks. Sorry to interrupt you.
No.
I have two questions from the chat that I think are important to hit today. If someone wants to change their information on the survey or missed saying, yes, we need a Chromebook on the survey, who should they contact?
In terms of the survey, if you need to make changes, I would ask you to reach out to your school principal, to the main office. Tell them what the change is that you need. We are working from a very large spreadsheet, as you can imagine, and they will make the changes to the school's request, so for specific students in specific schools, and then that information will be conveyed to the large, as someone referred to it yesterday, our mothership spreadsheet. And that's where we're doing our planning from. So in terms of how many of this we might need or how many teachers we need here, that's really the document that's driving it. So I would encourage you to reach out to your schools as quickly as possible if you're going to make a change.
Susan, could you speak to the timelines around changing from virtual to in-person and in-person to virtual? What are folks' options? What if they change their mind? Is there one way to go that's easier than the other?
Absolutely. If you start your student as an in-person student, so either at elementary 5 days a week or at secondary on the hybrid schedule, and then decide that this isn't really working and you want to make them a fully virtual student, that will be a much easier move to make because we will be able to assign them a teacher and they will already have their schedule at secondary. So we aren't trying to fit students here. Going the other way, if you start as a virtual student and then decide you want to be in person, that's why I'm asking you to commit to the first quarter at the 6-12 grade levels and the first trimester at elementary, which is early December. The reason for that is this. In preparation for figuring out how many students could safely be in a classroom socially distanced with enough egress to move around, we had our architectural firm come in and work with our directors of buildings and grounds. They went through every classroom and every instructional space, measured that space, and then used a formula to determine, based on those parameters, 6 feet with egress, how many people, inclusive of the teacher, could be in each of our classrooms. Most of our elementary classrooms, it's 10 students and 1 teacher. So if I'm that teacher teaching first grade, I have 2 classrooms, 1 group of 10 in A and 1 group of 10 in B, and now you want to send your student back to us. I wouldn't be able to take that student because my class is already at capacity. We've already filled all the chairs and desks in there. So our next look would be is if there's a open seat in another first grade, which is the part Karen was talking about, that you might then not end up at your home school. So you'd be back in school, but not at your home school. And then the other piece will be, we are also setting up the transportation runs so that students are socially distanced on our buses. So we can't simply add people to buses either. If the seats are full in the way that we are socially distancing and we can't put another student on the bus, it could take some time before we have an open seat on the bus. So we might be able to get you just a seat at school, but then you would need to bring your child. it will take a bit more time because you're trying to come back into a situation that we have got pretty well contained, again, to meet those guidelines for social distancing and safety. So, and the short answer is easier to go from in-person to virtual. That move from virtual or hybrid, I'm sorry, from virtual to in school will be a bit more of a struggle.
Would you mind, pass it back to you and then I'll
Sure.
report back?
Absolutely. There you go.
So folks, I'll take some of the questions from the chat. Siblings riding the bus, will they be able to sit together? Yes, we hope that they will. That way we can put more students on the bus with siblings riding together. There's some great questions in the chat about at what point would the district go to 100% virtual if cases were reported in the district, and that decision would come from the Department of Health. The district would not make that decision, I believe. I'm looking at Susan, that would be a Department of Health decision, or the governor does have guidelines out about certain numbers of cases in counties or districts. Folks are asking, the number of students isn't limited at the elementary school, and why is that? The structure of an elementary building versus the structure of a secondary building. At elementary, we have 30 students, 20 students, 16 students in a classroom. Reading teachers, special ed teachers, special area teachers, they all have their own rooms. So we were lucky that we could keep our elementary students at elementary so that we could offer just 2 options instead of the in-person and virtual, instead of a hybrid. We have the space. We can be socially distanced. We have the number of adults available to cover those classes. So we were able to accommodate that at elementary. So students Susan and Dave, with 1 minute left, I would just remind folks that if your question didn't get answered today, we will get your questions answered, but I'll pass it back to Susan and Dave for closure.
Dave,
Susan,
I'm going to go first and then
okay.
turn it over to you.
I want to just, again, I normally open with this, but I want to thank everybody for making the time to join us on behalf of the Board of Education. I know we're very thankful that our parents are so engaged in the return to school. I know all the hard work that the committees are doing. I know how hard our administration, teachers, and the entire school is working to get your children back to school and educated in the best possible manner. I just wanted to just reiterate one thing Karen had said, that it's hard to get to every single question here. Some of them take a few minutes of research to do to make sure that we're giving you the right answer. So we will get all of your answers. We will get you answers to all of your questions. But I just want to add one additional thing here. If you put a question on Facebook, the likelihood that you're getting an answer from a school personnel person who knows the accurate answer to that is probably slim to zero. We deal primarily with emails or directly through these kinds of meetings, board meetings, but we don't monitor Facebook and try to answer all the threads of conversation that are taking place. It's just not feasible for us, and there's always so much misinformation there. The best way to get your answer for your question is to email it to the school, to the Board of Education, to ask it in these kinds of settings. It's just that a few people have called me and said my question's not getting answered, and when I asked them where they put it, I said, that's why. Just put it in the chat box. It's captured. These are all recorded. Every one of your questions is recorded, and we'll be able to answer it. And I guess we'll see you on Thursday night.
I too want to thank you for your participation in today's town hall. I know it is difficult when there is still so much ambiguity, although we are certainly sharing much more solid information than we have had up to this point. I understand that there are still lots of questions, and frankly, some of them we can't answer at this point. So this is what I'd like you to take away from today. The district is working incredibly hard to make sure we are prepared to bring our students back in person and safely. I don't think there is a person who would disagree that face-to-face instruction for many youngsters, not all, is preferable to virtual. And that is not to say some students don't learn beautifully virtually, but research would show us that the way we interact with youngsters, our ability to help them socially and emotionally, as well as academically, is certainly enhanced by having a face-to-face relationship with youngsters. As your superintendent, I want to ensure you that student and staff safety is always my priority. It was before the pandemic, it will continue to be through the pandemic, and certainly once this is over. So if you have questions, do not hesitate to ask them. I want you to feel comfortable with the decisions you make as parents and guardians about your children's education. I also want to make sure you have the best possible information to make those decisions. And as for the ambiguity that we're all living with, if I could fix that, I would, but I can't. So just know that we are very conscientious in our approach, and we are meeting the guidelines or exceeding the guidelines that have been set for us by a variety of institutions. If you haven't seen our reopening plan, it's on our district website, and it will be periodically updated to reflect new information. So that is always an excellent source. Thank you again for joining us today and taking the time out of your very busy schedules to learn more about our plans for the school year. Thank you.
Bye, everyone.